Hi guys, γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're making chocolate walnut biscotti. In Greek, they're known as Paximadia. They're delicious, they're chocolatey, they're crunchy from the walnuts. They're crunchy in general because biscotti tends to be a crunchy cookie, although I like to bake mine a tiny bit softer than the ones that are sold in the supermarket, but I'll show you how to make them both ways, or I will at least tell you how to make them both ways. These are perfect for gift giving, great as hostess gifts, or perfect if you want to call some friends over for a nice hot cup of coffee and feed them something sweet to go with it. Let's get started. I'm making one batch, but I recommend you make two because they last long, number one, or you can just make one batch of the dough and keep it frozen. And then if you have company coming over last minute, you just take it out. It thaws out really quickly, and then you could bake a batch of these in no time. So I'm starting with a stick of butter that's 4 ounces or 113 grams. This is unsalted butter. You want to make sure that it's nice and soft. Then I'm going to add 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, 330 grams. I'm going to skip the gram measurement saying it because it distracts me and I have to keep looking back at a piece of paper because my memory is awful. But all of the gram measurements are going to be on the written website. I do that from now on with all of my recipes. Okay, now I'm going to add a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. Or a little more. I never really measure. I always put more vanilla than the recipe calls for just because it's so delicious. And a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And we're just gonna beat this until the sugar is incorporated and everything is nice and fluffy. All right, now I have 3 eggs that are room temperature. I'm just gonna put them in there, mix once again until they're incorporated. All right, so for the dry ingredients, I have 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup of cocoa. This is unsweetened cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and you can definitely add some more flavorings if you like. Anise seed is really nice, goes really well with chocolate. I'm also gonna finely chop, or roughly chop, this semi-sweet chocolate bar that I have here. That's 4 ounces. If you have mini chocolate chips, you could use those. I just like the rustic look of the baking chocolate. You can use dark chocolate if you prefer. And if you're a milk chocolate person, it is going to be a little sweet for this recipe, but if that's what you like, go for it. Next, you're going to need a cup of walnuts or about 110 grams. And if you want to pulse them through a food processor, you can do that. Or you can just go roughly chop them with your knife so you don't have to end up washing one more piece of equipment. You can use almonds, pecans, pistachios, macadamia nuts, whatever your favorite nut is. You could even leave the nuts out. Up to you, your biscotti, your kitchen. Put in it whatever you prefer and whatever you love. I think chocolate walnut is such a popular combination. Hazelnut is really nice too, although hazelnuts, depending on where you live, can be kind of pricey. Now I'm just going to whisk the dry ingredients together. So now I'm just going to add the flour ingredients in 2 or 3 batches. Once I get to the 3rd batch, I'm just going to mix the nuts and the chocolate in with the flour so they can get kind of coated. And then I'm going to add that to the mixer and let it mix until a dough is formed. All right, so this is a very sticky dough, so lightly flour your counter with some all-purpose flour, and then transfer the dough on there and just roll it a few times so it's easier to handle. Be careful not to add too much flour, otherwise it'll make the cookies kind of dry. Cut it into 2 equal portions, and then you should have a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper ready. And you can just put the log right onto the parchment paper and flatten it out to about 1 inch in thickness or so. Yeah, that's almost 1 inch. Not an inch might be a little too much, like half an inch to 3/4 of an inch is going to be perfect. Now, if you don't want to add any flour at all, you can just form this into a disc and put it in the refrigerator for like 30-40 minutes. It'll be easier to handle. But if you're like me and you have no patience, go ahead and lightly flour it like I did and then form the logs. There we go. You want to make sure there's a little bit of space in between. Then I have some granulated sugar. This is going to add a little bit of crunch to the top and some more sweetness. Now, it has 1.5 cups of sugar inside the dough. If you want a little less sugar, that's fine. But keep in mind that cocoa powder is completely unsweetened. So I think it has the perfect amount of sugar, but you do you. And that is what they're supposed to look like. So my oven is preheated to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. They're going to bake on the center rack for about 30 or 35 minutes or until they're nice and firm to the touch. The center should be nice and firm. They shouldn't be soft. Otherwise, they're going to be doughy when you go ahead to slice them into the biscotti. Once they come out, I'll show you what they look like because then they're going to get twice baked. They're going to be sliced and then baked, but when we get to that, we'll get to it. In the meantime, I'm going to clean this area up and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so the first round of baking was done in 35 minutes. Each oven varies, so keep an eye on it. Once you touch it and it's firm to the touch and your finger can't go inside anymore, kind of just like a cake, then you know that they're done. It's best if you let them cool completely, but I'm kind of in a hurry because I'm also recording another video right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and slice these while they're still slightly warm. You're gonna need 2 baking trays that are lined with parchment paper. I'm gonna reuse this one, and then I'm just gonna use one more. And then I like to cut these on the diagonal. And it is best to use a serrated knife because they do kind of crack and break a little bit. But you know what? Biscotti or biscottacchia or Paximadia, like they're known in Greek, are meant to be rustic, so they don't have to be perfect. Just look at how they look on the inside. Oh my gosh, they're so good. I can eat them like this because I'm more of a softer kind of cookie fan, unless it's kurambiades, which are the Greek almond cookies. This is just smelling so good, but I am going to bake it off a little bit longer so they could firm up just a tiny bit more. And don't throw away these crumbs because this makes for a delicious crust. You could make a cheesecake crust if you're making like a chocolate cheesecake or something like this. Let me push them to the side. And once they're all in the baking tray, the oven is still set to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. They're going to go in there and they're going to bake for about 10-15 minutes. You can leave them in there longer if you like yours super crispy. Just keep an eye on them. The maximum amount of time I would keep them in there for would be about 20 minutes or so. When they come out, let them cool completely, make some coffee, and they're going to be ready to serve. So the biscottis took about 10-12 minutes in the oven to bake. Like I said, you can definitely bake them longer if you like them a little bit more dry and more crisp. Make some coffee, let these cool, and then it's time to serve them. I like to serve them with a nice cup of Greek coffee. You can serve it with whatever you want. My kids like to dunk this in milk. Anyway, we used to make these at our bakery. We had a bakery for 10 years, and these were super popular. We sold these from day one. These and our vanilla almond anise biscotti were super popular, and I already have that recipe up there. It's time to take a bite. You know what these taste like? If a brownie could be a biscotti, it would be this. They're still sort of gooey in the center just because I do like to underbake them just a tiny bit. They're so chocolatey, so rich. I love the combination of the chocolate and the walnuts. Second best would be chocolate and hazelnut. Third best would probably be chocolate pistachio. You guys let me know what's your favorite combination in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. If you want to dip these in chocolate, white chocolate or dark chocolate would work, and hand these out as gifts, be my guest. They're so delicious as is. The exact recipe is on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, sis.